The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Welcome back to the award-winning Keefer and Kurre. Of course, you can see Kip and Tone every Saturday morning, 10:30, 11 o'clock on ABC 3340's The Starting Lineup. Well, we're getting ready for college football, less than 100 days away from pro stuff as well. So we'll get ready. I know it's very, very exciting. But on this particular Keefer and Kurre, we have Father's Day coming up this Sunday, and you and I are fathers. And,
yes.
And I think we both respect and love each other for what we do for our kids. And I certainly know what a wonderful father you are and all the things you do for your kids. So today I want to talk
right
about
back
dads.
at you.
Thank you. And I want to talk about what dads want. Every 3.24 seconds, a dad acts like a buffoon. That's the conclusion of a small study done by a student at Brigham Young University after watching 8 hours of two of the most popular Disney shows. The results of the research, called Daddies or Dummies, aren't particularly surprising. Erica Sharner did a study in the Journal of Broadcasting and Electronic Media, found that the number of times a mother told a joke at the father's expense increased from 1.8 times per episode in the 1950s to more than 6 times per episode in the year 2020. Today's sitcoms, by contrast, often shows dads just trying to act like mothers have traditionally done it and failing miserably. In the episode of Blackish, the mother and the father learn they haven't been saving as much money as they should have. The father, played by Anthony Anderson, was supposed to be in charge of the finances. Not only does he prove to be an incompetent money manager, his wife, played by Tracy Ellis Ross, also says that if he doesn't get his act together, then he's going to have to start dealing with the children's lives more, taking them to doctor's appointments, worrying about their schedules, etc. Fate he seems to fear more than death itself. Not only has Anderson failed in his traditionally male role, but the assumption is that he'd be a total disaster performing his wife's duties. So here's what fathers really want. And this, according to a wonderful article here in the Seattle Times called...
Another real bastion of sanity.
Actually, this is pretty good. More American dads prefer presents over presents for Father's Day. Dads are spending more time than ever on child care and interactive activities with their children. Dr. Will Courtney, psychiatrist, founding editor of the International Journal of Men's Health, agrees today's dads are definitely more involved with parenting. In fact, the time fathers spend with their kids has increased over 300% since the 1960s. This is good for both kids and dads, as kids with fathers and involved fathers do better in just about every way they can measure. And so 15% of dads this Father's Day, according to this article, say they want to change the pace this year. No gifts at all. As a matter of fact, racks of novelty ties, socks, last-minute gift cards, grilling tools off to mark Father's Day. But in 2025, American dads hope for something a little different. All we desire is your presence. What they want most is to spend time with their kids. Nearly 60% of them, in fact. Others rank a special meal, practical gift, or a day of relaxation high on their list. But in this particular case, dads just want to be with their kids. Mm-hmm. And I think this is, you can kind of tell where fathers are with their kids and how many kids they got when you look at golf courses on Father's Day. Because Father's Day, golf courses are pretty full. It's because a lot of dads want to go play golf. Now, in our particular case, I feel like if it's Father's Day, I want to be with my kids. I don't want to be away from my kids. I know mothers like that too, and that's certainly great. For Mother's Day, I mean, they watch the kids 24 hours a day. If the father's working, he's the breadwinner, and she's working her tail off, watching the family. And she wants a day of pampering at the Woodhouse Day Spa. I get that. She doesn't want to spend changing diapers on Mother's Day. She deserves to go out and do her thing. But in this particular case, and I have found this true, and I can only speak for myself, I just want to be appreciated. That's all I want. I've always told my kids, don't get me anything. A handmade card, just it's the thought that matters, just means so much to me. I just want to appreciate it. I want to hug, and I want to thank you for everything you do for me, Dad. I'll never forget about, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, maybe. My oldest son was about 10 or 11 years old, so it was probably 10 years ago. He had brought a go-kart over to the house, was one of my neighbor's go-karts, and it had fallen apart, and something was wrong with the carburetor on it. And I'm not a mechanic, but I can go pull a hood of a truck and look like I know what I'm doing. And I can change a spark plug, and I can change the oil on a vehicle and change some tires and do things like that. And I can usually look under the hood of a car and tell if something's wrong. and it wasn't running right, and I could tell what was wrong with it. And I said, well, I can tell you what's wrong with it right now, son. And he pulled this, oh, you think you can fix this, Dad? So you're going to fix the go-kart? And I was like, you know what? You go fix it yourself then. And I had my tools. I laid them down. I said, you go fix them then. And I thought to myself, would I have ever said that to my dad? Would I ever look at my dad while he had the lawnmower upside down, knowing he didn't know what the hell he was doing, ever question my dad? Would I ever say, Dad, what the hell are you doing? Do you know what you're doing? Would you ever treat your father like a buffoon? Where are the days of the great fathers like Ward Cleaver? Where is Ozzie Nelson? Where is John Walton Sr.? Where's Robert Young? Is Jim Anderson? What about Charles Ingalls? Where is he at? Where's Mike Brady? Where's Andy Taylor? Where are these great dads? They're out there, and we're right here. And we don't need to be made fun of. For whatever reason, it's fun now to make fun of dads, and I'm over it. I'm done with it. And I just want to tell you, all my kids, and I know my kids love me, I like to be a buffoon. I like to be strange, but it's I'm self-deprecating. I think that's a wonderful quality about some people. I'm not an egomaniac, and I try to make fun of myself because life's too short, and I never take myself too seriously. But as long as my kids know who and what I stand for and what I am, then I'm all good. I know my kids are there, and I think that says a lot about being a father and what that means to my children. And so that's kind of what I wanted to get into today, because I know for a fact, just based on my experience with you, that you are exactly in the same boat. I know you go to the ends of the earth to be there for your sons, despite the fact that they're a little older than my kids.
Yeah, and when you reach this level of the experience, and you started later than I did, because both of my sons are in their 30s. I've got one sneaking up on 40 already.
Wow.
So that's a sobering thought. But this is the stage for me where I see what. They're both very successful. They're both extremely talented, and all that's great. But the satisfaction is, and really what the whole idea of this exercise is creating quality human beings. And I see how they treat other people. I see the respect they have for their coworkers and their friends and people that they interact with. And every time I see one of those courtesies, anytime I see them display that kind of behavior, it's like, I don't care what the rest of the world thinks, because I have the gratification and the satisfaction that I did my job, and that's the most important thing. And you used a great word. If you're really truly a father to your children, all that you don't want any kind of reward, but appreciation is a great word. You just want, and even if they don't say it, if they appreciate you, in how they, interact with you, the things they say to you. I think I've told you before, my prized possession, when Case went to Las Vegas and bet on himself and decided this is where he wanted to live and he was going to try to make his career. He started as an intern with the World Series of Poker, a game he knew nothing about.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was his first job in Vegas.
Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome.
And he made all the contacts, and by the time the World Series of Poker's 3-month run ended, because that's not just one tournament, that's a whole series that goes on all summer, he had made contacts and was hired by the Las Vegas Sun as a sports reporter. And so he bet on himself, and just the fact that he had the confidence and the perseverance to do that. But it wasn't long after that, probably 3 or 4 years, that he covered his first Super Bowl. And it was the Falcons and Patriots. It was down in Houston, and that was his first opportunity to go to a Super Bowl.
What a great first Super Bowl, huh?
Oh, man, one of the most historic of all time for Atlanta Falcon fans, a total collapse. But anyway, and Case being a Southeast kid, that was kind of meaningful for him too. We never been big Falcons fans, but that was kind of the team in the Southeast. Anyway, about a week after that Super Bowl, I got a package in the mail from Case. It had a bunch of, stadium cups for the Super Bowl. It had a couple of T-shirts and a hat, and it had a card. and the card was a thank you card, like a greeting card. But in that card, he wrote the words, I can't tell you what an experience this was, but I do want you to know that the entire time I felt like I was sitting next to you at that game.
Oh,
And the reason I felt that way is because you told me since I could talk that this was possible for me. And he said, and nobody's ever believed in me like you believed in me, and you're the reason that I was here. And this experience was as much yours as it was mine.
wow.
Tony, it was the most meaningful thing in the world, and he didn't ever have to give me anything ever again. That was the ultimate gratification and thanks. And the fact that my younger son, who's back here in Birmingham after living in Las Vegas, working for the same newspaper, the fact that my younger son still wants me involved in his life at 32 years old. He doesn't look at me like a buffoon. He looks at me as almost like a compadre, an associate, and that's the relationship at this stage I want. If they need advice or they want to talk about something, which is rare, but it happens occasionally, I'm always equipped to do that. But right now, I'm just enjoying the relationship with two of the most quality individuals I know, and they just happen to be my sons.
You're about ready to make me shed a tear here. I have a son that's going to turn 21 later this year, and he really respects authority, and that's really important to me. For ever since he was 3 or 4 years old, I've always told him that anytime he sees a person in uniform, you
Yeah.
must go over there, shake their hand, and thank them for their service. And he still does that to this day. He'll go across a restaurant and he does it without even thinking about it and says thank you for your service. And I want him to appreciate that. And I think a lot of kids his age don't necessarily do that, because I think when you respect authority, it doesn't mean you're a wuss and that you don't want to protest and don't want to have your own ideas. It just you have to be in your ranks and respect that. There's good and bad, people and everything we do. Good cops, bad cops, whatever, blah 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 blah. But yeah, and you're so spot on, because the greatest gift I've ever received was the same exact thing. Anyone knows my story. It's been since I turned 50. I'm 59. It's been a hell of a ride. I've lost everything, and I'm in the process of getting everything back. I'm super blessed. No pity party for me. I'm super good and super successful in what I do. I do what I love, and I've done that ever since I opened a microphone when I was 12 years old. But he wrote me a card that looked like it was probably going to start with a paragraph and turned out to be 4 pages long.
Wow.
And it was written in different colors, and it just spoke from his heart. And I had to put it down 3 different times because I couldn't get through it.
Well,
And at the time when I received it, I wasn't probably the best dad in the world, and probably had made some pretty bad choices in life. So yeah, it's a learning experience, but it's certainly important to realize, and that's why I really don't get why fathers wouldn't want to be part of their kids' lives. Period. We have a next door neighbor, and I'm actually the godfather to this young lady's 2 children. They're 4 and 1, or 4 and 2, Elijah and Malachi, and they don't see their dad. Their dad's down in Texas and he's working. I don't know if he's financially responsible. I don't know what his situation is, but they never see their dad. And so he was in town just for a couple of days this past week, and came home, and they had a big celebration, and this, that, and the other, and off he goes. And I'm just like, I can't imagine. That was the worst part of my divorce. And I fought it tooth and nail. Everyone keeps saying that when you have children, it goes by so fast. It goes by so fast. Enjoy every moment you have with your kids. Well, take that and cut it in half, because I knew I was only going to see my kids half the time if we had dual parentship of our children, and I knew I was going to get that. But I mean, you cut that in half, see your kid, you're only seeing your kids 14, 15 days out of the month. Hell no, I don't go on dates. I've never needed a babysitter. I've never hired a babysitter in 4 or 5 years since my divorce, because I'm going to be with my kids every moment they're here. That doesn't mean my kids don't have sleepovers. No, they do whatever they want to do, but I'm going to be here there for them, because I know how quick it goes. And with that being said, I got a 21, an 18, and a 13 now. And I mean, it just flies by. And like you mentioned, you've got one that's coming up on 40 years of age. Being a father is the best job in the world. It's the most responsible and hardest thing you'll ever do. It is totally
But it's the
different.
most important thing
It
you'll
is the
ever
most
do.
important thing you'll ever do. And there's research. You look at it. We can always tell. We can always tell by youngsters whether they had a father figure in their life.
Definitely.
And you can tell which ones didn't have a mother figure in their life, and they're different. They're different. When you see men with their fathers and they don't have mothers for whatever reason, it's a different type of relationship than when you see. And that's the one thing I see. I watch draft nights all the time, the NFL draft or Major League Baseball draft or whatever. And they're in the green room or the blue room, whatever you want to call it, and they're waiting for the phone to ring. And I always watch to see who the draft pick hugs first or who they're hugging when they get that call. And 99% of the time, it's their mother.
Of course.
And it should be. It should be their mother first. You should honor your mother. And mothers, I mean, gosh, they brought you into this world. They could take you out of this world. Without mom, you're not here, okay? And yeah, moms can do it without dads. They can be artificially inseminated. I get that. We don't carry children for 9 months like women do. And I couldn't even tell you how much we appreciate that. But I like to see who they hug. And then usually they'll hug their father. But you know what, Kip? Sometimes they don't have a dad to hug.
No, that's right.
I'd say half the time. And I put something out on social media a couple years ago. I was like, where are the dads on this draft night? Where are the fathers at? And, someone wrote back, you better be careful, Tone. You're poking a snake here. And I guess you thought it was because the majority of the picks were African Americans. I don't know. It wasn't a black or white issue for me. I was just like, where are the damn fathers at?
Yeah.
And it just pissed me off. And golly, you would think, if they're deadbeat dads, they're going to be there. The one thing they're going to show up for is birthdays, anniversaries. If my son's being drafted, it's payday for dad because he knows, alimony and child support is probably going out the window. So, it's just what a great opportunity. And if one dad's out there listening today, the Keefer Kurre show, and doesn't feel like he's being as much a part of his children's life as he probably should, I can tell you right now, you're right. If you don't think you're being enough, then you should be. And I think that's one thing that we are having a lot of rub here because a lot of fathers, like I said, nearly 260, 270% were with our children more than we were back in the 60s, that being 60 years ago. It's about time. But that was a different time. It was a different generation. That's when fathers worked their asses off 60 hours a week. My dad threw newspapers for a living for 40 years to take care of his family.
Wow.
I didn't see my dad unless it was around the kitchen table or on Sunday mornings when he came home from Ed's pony keg after he had a couple of beers after throwing newspapers all night. And my mom ran the show because she was a stay-at-home mom and we had 4 kids. And that's just the way it was. Now we have, of course, families where mothers and fathers work. We have fathers who are expected to take care of kids and take them to appointments. Most dads I know look forward. We've got a very good friend of ours, Kai Gregory, who we know when he doesn't respond to our texts because he's with his boy Knox and he's doing Little League games. And I mean, I respect those fathers who put everything they got into to hopefully fulfilling their kids' dreams, no matter what that is, whether that's a spelling bee or whether it's baseball or anything else. So I think it's wonderful that fathers are a bigger part of that life. And hey, ladies, you should be happy that fathers are like that because it's going to be less off your plate.
Well, I mean, I agree emphatically with everything you just said. I think what we're experiencing now is sadly, and maybe it's starting to turn back around, but we went through a long period where so many young people grew up without their dad because the divorce rate just ballooned to the appalling level that families were disrupted and that structure is gone. So you had a whole generation of young men who grew up and were expected to be responsible fathers, but really didn't know what to do because they didn't have that experience on their as a child. Mm-hmm. So I think you had a real bad period. But I do feel the pendulum swinging back. I like the fact that we're getting back to family and spiritual values. I think it's extremely encouraging that almost every young man, major role model, whether they're a basketball player or a football player, now where it was kind of taboo before, a lot of them are thanking God after a game. Well, God made this possible, and the kid who made the big play in the Ohio State Texas game, the big sack and the scoop and score, he said, I didn't even realize until I was almost to the goal line what was going on. He says, I was being driven by heavenly providence there. I was just, he said, I wasn't even functioning in the moment of knowing what I was doing. He said, ball, pick up, run. He says, I'm going to have to go back and watch the play because I don't have any, he already kind of blacked out about it. But he's given all the credit to God, and that's a step in the right direction because this whole kind of attack on families, this whole kind of government initiative to reward single mothers for having multiple children and really just kind of factoring fathers out of the equation. And it's sad to me.
By the way, do you ever hear someone say, I'm a single father? I don't ever hear that. I don't ever hear someone say I'm a single father. I hear you're a single mother all the time. I'm on Facebook and I'm like, hey, I'm a single mother looking for blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, God bless you. You're a single mother. Well, you're single for a reason. Okay. I don't know what you did, what you decided to do. Certainly God be with you if you were part of domestic violence and you had to get out of a messy relationship. I get you and I pray for you. But if you're a single mother because you chose to be a single mother, God bless you, man. I hope you were, but I'm not going to give you points for that. I don't see dads, and maybe it's because there's not that many of them out there. But I'm a single father, but I don't go out there telling people I'm a single father. I revel in that. I love the challenge. I love the idea that I get my 3 kids, and people are like, that must be hard. I'm like, you learn, you figure it out. There were things that my wife did. She had her duties, and I had my duties. Now you have to do all of them. But I mean, yeah, the single mother thing is like. There's a woman, I guess I'm flying off the thing here, but there's a woman at school, and on the back of her car, proud to be a single mother. And I'm like, really? You're proud to be a single mother?
That's not a family unit. I'm sorry.
I don't even know what to say. You're right. You're right. And no matter what you say, when you break up that family, when you come from a broken home, it is a broken home because it's broken. It is. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt, but it just drives me crazy when I hear that.
I have written a book, of course. What does George Clooney have that I ain't got? And I've got a whole chapter in there about my dad. And my dad, left my mother and had a torrid affair with a bartender downtown who ended up being the proprietor of a strip club in Memphis. The story couldn't be any more ridiculous, but I love my dad. I refused to have a relationship with him all through my teenage years because he was out of the picture. And we did get back together in my college years, basically because he bribed me to leave Atlanta where all my friends and everything I knew were, with the promise of a car. And it turned out to be a former salesman's station wagon because he worked for Johnson Wax. Nice. So that wasn't so good, but I had wheels.
You had wheels.
But we patched things up, but it was never the same. And the chapter about my dad in my book is called The Great Unfluence, not the great influence, the great unfluence, because I became a better man and a primo father, if I say so myself,
yes, you did.
By doing exactly what my dad didn't do. And that so he actually taught me in reverse exactly how to be a better man and a better father.
Amen to that, man. And it was so great that you saw that. And you knew that the differences were, it's funny because my dad was always my dad first. He was my best man at my wedding, which he thought was really strange. I said down in the South, it's kind of a tradition where fathers are the best man at their weddings. And he's like, I can't be your best man, your dad. I'm like, you're my best man. I mean, you're my best friend. He was my best friend by the time he had passed away from cancer. And, several times he said to me, I could have been there more. I could have done more for you. And looking back on it, I thought my dad was there all the time, and my dad was never there. I can never remember throwing a baseball in my front yard with my dad. I never went on vacation with my father. We went down to Kentucky once a year because he had a mobile home down there. It's a piece of trash mobile home, and all we go down there was we spend 3 or 4 days cleaning up the mobile home, and then we'd leave.
Time to go, yeah.
The glass was broken, raccoons would get in it because we never went to it. But that's all I needed. But my dad was there financially, and then towards the end, my trips I had with him, we went to Vegas every year, and there was a lot of things that there wasn't a whole lot that I didn't know about my dad by the time he passed away, and so. I hope my children. There's a fine line because I know a lot of people want to be their friends, and I think that's one thing where we kind of get a little scratchy. It's interesting because we were talking about when women don't have fathers. I pulled up just to find out what was going on with Jordan Hudson. Of course, she is the 24-year-old who's dating Bill Belichick, who's in his 70s, and come to find out that her parents are divorced. She never saw her dad. He's a Maine fisherman. He was on a fishing boat pretty much his entire life. And not to broad brush anything, but normally when you see really young women with older men, what do they usually say? She didn't have a father figure. And that's how that usually happens. And for some reason that this seems very poignant there. And the fact that, her mother's now dating another boyfriend or whatever, and it doesn't say anything about her father in this particular situation. Mentions the fact they were both cheerleaders and that her parents are no longer married. But it's always fun because it's not fun, but whenever you see a really young woman with an older man, it usually means she's looking for a father figure, and that's not always the healthiest of relationships. So
yeah, and probably the chances of success are pretty limited, because that's not the right way. After all I talked about of what happened to me as a kid, my wife and I divorced, which would have been the last thing on earth. In fact, when she wanted the divorce, I refused to get legal counsel. I refused to participate. I wouldn't sign papers. I'm not in on this. You're taking away my family, and she has apologized to me since we should have toughed it out. We should have done what was necessary. It's a long story, but a lot of it was based on careers and what I was doing in terms of trying to make things work. But for me, and I could be, and I whine too much about it because I'm at a stage of my life where, I've been single since 2003. That's a long time. That's 22 years back out here. And I have made minor in recent years excursions into, trying to do something about that, because I don't think any person at their core really wants to feel like they're, not involved in any kind of social situation. But for me, the reason that I'm so far behind on that is because my kids at the time of my divorce, appallingly, were about the same age I was when my parents divorced. My oldest son, Case, was 14. My youngest son, Clayt, was just turning 10. And Tony, I don't care, divorced or what, I was not going to miss my sons' lives. That was right when they were at a point where they did need me even more than when they were little kids. And so I refused. I didn't go out looking for somebody to take my wife's place. I didn't date. I mean, I was a dad. That's what I was, a professional dad during that time.
I hear you.
And that was about a 10-year period, because like I say, Clayt was only 10 years old.
And to be honest with you, I don't want, I know this sounds crazy. And we talked before we did the show, and I mentioned the fact that, sometimes you get a lonely heart. I know you do, because the love for your children is certainly a different love than you have for another person that you're
definitely.
There's no doubt, but I wouldn't change anything different. And I feel like when God thinks my children are ready for me to move on with a relationship, then it will happen. But right now they got my undivided attention. But continue. But I applaud your efforts. I know you probably didn't want to be single for 22 or 23 years, but there's a reason why you're doing what you're doing, and it'll work out. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that's basically, you just kind of made my point. Yeah. I made a conscious decision that this was the most important thing, was my sons, not my personal relationship. And, so I got kind of behind the 8 ball, and now I'm at a stage when you get to this age, unless you find one of those relationships you talked about, which are not really real, to find somebody much younger. I guess that's a direction you can gravitate. But so many women at our stage right now have been burned and have chosen poorly, and, and been with guys that have not fulfilled their promises. And I feel like I pay for the sins of a lot of their bad choices before.
Amen to that, man.
So many dynamic women that are strong enough to go on their own and accomplish great things are just not in the market now. Two are the three best women that I know that would have extreme interest in, including one in particular, is so independent. She has no, I'm just not even a candidate now. Yeah. And I feel like that really cheats me out of what I have accomplished as a person, of doing the right things and taking the right stands. But at the end of the day, it's all worth it, the satisfaction of seeing my sons thrive and be the great human beings they are. And so whatever that's cost me personally is completely overwhelmed by the satisfaction of knowing that my most important job has been fulfilled.
The cost is well worth every minute, every time.
Absolutely.
You said that. And I can honestly say that I think about these fathers who maybe their marriages end because they had an extracurricular or extramarital affair or some type of relationship, and they jump from one relationship right into another relationship, and that love transfers, not fully, obviously, from the love for a wife who you're supposed to be with forever to a floozy mistress, or perhaps someone that you're going to end up marrying again. And in the meantime, the kids are just kind of in the middle. I mean, I think it's, I think that, I would tell anybody that if you're in a relationship, man, pull back and say, listen, I know you're hot and heavy for this. And maybe that's the reason you broke up your marriage, is because you got this hot and heavy thing. But man, your kids are always going to come first. They've got to know that they're number one in your heart and in your priority list before you just go off and run off and do a floozy. And I can honestly say that if in your particular situation, if something had fallen into your lap, maybe a year after you got divorced, maybe you would have fallen in with the wrong type of person, and you wouldn't have been there to give those boys the type of love they needed at a very young age. So, I mean, it's all for a reason.
And wait, Tony, till Santo gets married and you have a grandchild.
Oh, man.
And when you see what you've instilled in him, and he becomes a great dad, that satisfaction, watching Case with his newborn daughter and his unbelievable son King, who's going to be 5 soon. Case is the best dad you could possibly imagine, and that, you talk about gratification, satisfaction for you doing the right things. To see Case in that role, that's a whole nother level of just knowing that it was all worth it.
Yeah. Happy Father's Day, brother. Appreciate you.
Thanks. Back to you. And you're smack dab in the middle of it. Like I say, mine are like my peers now. So that's a good phase of the whole thing too.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.